This Friday, the 16th of May, MPs will debate and vote on whether to legalise assisted suicide for people diagnosed with a terminal illness, where a doctor believes they probably have fewer than 6 months to live. However, there were concerns that the private members' bill being sponsored by Kim Ledbetter MP is highly flawed, dangerous, and irresponsible. Joining me is former journalist and broadcaster Farah Khan, who is now a disability activist. How you doing, Farah?
I'm chronically ill, so I've been better, but I'm just doing my best to get along.
Well, it's really good that you've agreed to speak about this because I'm not too sure about what's going on here. But why do you think the bill is causing such controversy?
Because there's been a lot of deceit from the beginning. It's been a lot of underhand tactics, and what we're being told is that this assisted suicide bill is just about being compassionate to terminally ill people, but actually that's a lie. This bill is a Trojan horse, which will affect each and every one of us. What this is really about is eugenics and euthanasia. It's the normalizing of killing of those who are chronically ill, vulnerable, and unprofitable, basically. Um, it's also about the dismantling of the welfare state and the social state, as I'm sure many people would have noticed with all the cuts happening all over the place. But such a bill wouldn't have passed. So the proponents of the bill have drafted it in such a way that it's about terminally ill people, and who would want to deny the wishes of terminally ill people. So that's why this time they're doing it this way via a private members bill, because it's the least scrutinized way of getting it passed, because there have previously been 11 attempts to get this through the House of Lords, and then 3 attempts through the House of Commons. And the organisation that's leading it this time is called Dignity in Dying, which was previously known as the Voluntary Euthanasia Society. So I guess it kind of gives you a clue in the name. The problem is, as soon as this bill gets passed, what's going to happen is that they're then going to start claiming that the safeguards in the bill have become barriers to equality, access, and autonomy. And then cases are going to be brought, legal cases, to try and expand the bill. And that's when the problem's really going to arise, and it applies to more and more people. And that's when we hit what's called the slippery slope, and we'll end up with devastating consequences, as is happening in other jurisdictions. And we've been warned by other countries not to go that route.
This is statistics for assisted deaths, and as you can see, Canada the started assisted deaths in 2016, and that the increase since legalization is 86%. Netherlands 2002 started, and the increase is 66%, and Belgium the increase has gone up 37%. The number of assisted deaths in Canada is 15,343. That was in 2023. I guess it's probably higher now, is it?
Yes, I mean that's the latest figures that are available, and even those aren't probably the highest at that time, because they have to wait for them to come in. And the other thing that has been discovered during my research is that actually a lot of the jurisdictions don't even record many of the deaths. So we're none the wiser. And also there's lots of complications which are not being reported, because in a lot of these countries, the assisted suicide services are provided by private doctors, and they're responsible for filling in the form. So, who's going to put down that it's taken somebody, for example, as happened in, I think in Oregon, 137 hours to die.
Wow.
And that's like quite a few days. I think that's 7 days to die. What a horrific way. And the daughter of someone's, Alicia Duncan, whose mother was killed by assisted suicide without her knowledge, she discovered from having an inquest done afterwards is that the way these drugs work is that they actually, they're not the way they appear to be when the person's dying. So what they do is they inject someone with a paralytic. So on the surface, the person looks like they're really peaceful and calm, but actually they end up drowning in their own blood. And these type of drugs were being used for executions, and because of the horrific effects on people, they've been stopped. But these are the kind of drugs that are not licensed, that are not being tested, are being going to be used to kill people.
Well, no, there's this other chart here. This shows projected assisted death figures for England and Wales. If the percentage death rate had been 5.4%, then there would have been 31,393 deaths per year, or 86 per day. Kim Ledbetter MP claimed in January 2025 that the death rate would be 3%. That means a death rate of 17,000 per year. And the government's impact assessment estimates that there will be 4,500 deaths per year after 10 years, which is clearly a huge underestimate of figures based on the other countries. So, I mean, what are the specific concerns that you have? I mean, those figures look really alarming, but what specific concerns do you have about the assisted suicide bill?
There are so many concerns being raised by, for example, the former ex-coroner, the Archbishop of London. I mean, they're horrendous. So I'll just go through a few now. Basically, you can qualify for assisted dying if doctors presume that you have capacity of 51%. So imagine if you've got learning disabilities or a mental illness, it's just on balance of probabilities. 51%, that's quite low. And also, doctors are going to be asked to assess. Doctors are not normally asked to assess mental capacity. And the basis of mental capacity is you're presumed to have capacity as a starting point. So that's very questionable. You can qualify if you're depressed or suicidal. You can qualify if you feel a burden to others. You don't have to be asked why you want to die, which we think this will be quite basic. You can qualify if you voluntarily stop eating and drinking and suffer malnutrition as a result. Your families will not be notified and may not find out after your death. So, you see your mother one day and then, you keep phoning her and you don't know what's happened, and you go around there and then you discover she's been euthanized without your knowledge. And also a really, really concerning thing is that if you agree to have assisted suicide, there's no inquest. So if the family afterwards are concerned about suspicious circumstances, because there's a very high rate of domestic abuse, and a lot of women, there are a lot of concerns about women becoming victims of basically being murdered. And then at the moment, it gets classed as mercy killings because these abusive men are very charming, and then I should convince the courts that, they were just doing it to help the person. And actually, the Voluntary Euthanasia Society, which is the previous name for Dignity in Dying, their previous general secretary was involved and questioned by police over the deaths of 250 women who were killed, a few decades ago. So, it's not that it doesn't happen. So it's women are particularly at risk from this. So the former coroner has written a letter to the Times a few days ago saying, well, this is absolutely totally unacceptable. If you can't have an inquest afterwards, then if it's an actual death, then there's a requirement for that to happen. And he thinks it could be in breach of the EHCR. The other thing that I thought about this, well, if they're not going to carry out investigations into suspected probably a murder, then why do we carry out investigations of any murder? Does that mean the police are going to stop carrying out investigations of murders that happen all the time? Or is it that certain groups of people who are considered less than expendables are not worth investigating?
Yeah.
It's very, 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 very concerning. And then in terms of raising assisted dying, the doctor doesn't have to have any training before raising it with you. They can raise it with under 18s. So from 16, they can raise it with you, but you can't ask for to be killed until you're 18. So, you might have a child, who's got an eating disorder, anorexia, and they get spoken to by the doctor, and it's a mental illness. And then at 18, they could go off and have this, and you would know, none the wiser, you wouldn't know. So it's very, very terrifying. I'll just try and go through a few. The other thing that's a great concern is that there's a real shortage of palliative care, which is the reason why a lot of people are suffering in pain. And this is one of the cases being made by Dignity in Dying, that so many people are dying in pain. Well, that's because the government's not funding palliative care sufficiently. Only 37% of hospices are funded by the government. They have to raise funds through charity to actually fund the homes, and palliative care itself is very low funded. So what's another concern under this bill is that hospices and care homes, they can't opt out of the assisted dying carried out on their premises. If they refuse and they receive public money, then they could lose their public money. So a lot of palliative doctors are not happy about this, and they may leave an impression, which would be, very detrimental to people who are in a lot of pain and need that help at the end of their life. This bill was being sold right from the beginning by Kim Leadbeater as, oh, it'll be the highest safeguards in the world, there'll be a high court judge, nothing will be better. But what's happened is being downgraded. There's not going to be a judge anymore. There's going to be a death panel, which is claimed to be going to be a KC, a psychiatrist and a social worker. But as anyone knows, anybody who tries to get social care, you have to wait up to 2 years to get an assessment. People have to wait at least a year to see a psychiatrist. And the court system's it's blocked up with cases. So I don't know how that's going to work in practice. I know in places like New York, they use physicians associates to assess people on these kind of boards. So that's another, concern. There's a few other very serious concerns about the panel. So the panel doesn't have to hear from the applicant, the person who's wanting to die. They can be pre-recorded. So if you've got an abusive husband or partner, or it could be the other way around, they could be there in the background coercing you to say you want to die because they don't want to look after you because you become disabled or terminally ill, and it could be agreed. And the panel doesn't have to ask any questions, make any further inquiries, or notify anyone. The only thing that the panel has to do is hear from one doctor. The panel can sit in private. It has no investigatory powers. Evidence is not heard on oath. The panel can't summon any witnesses. Decisions are taken by majority vote. So when they say majority vote, if two of them decide, I don't agree, we're just gonna abstain, because one person said it's okay, it will still be passed.
Wow.
That's really concerning. And the commissioner that she's saying, is going to be a former judge who's going to oversee this whole process, he's not there to be on the panel. He's just involved if cases are refused. But then only people who are pro-suicide are going to want to be on the panel. People who are against it are not going to agree to the panel. So basically, it's going to be like other countries where whoever applies is basically going to be accepted to have assisted suicide.
Wow. So, I mean,
yeah.
From what I've read as well that you sent me, it appears that we already have a kind of involuntary euthanasia taking place in the NHS in the form of do not resuscitate and end of life protocols. Can you tell people a bit about that?
Yeah, some people may be aware that during COVID, most disabled people had DNRs put on their medical records without their knowledge, and the same happened to elderly people. And when people think that, oh, when you have a DNR put on your record, it means that, oh, they just won't resuscitate you. But actually, what happens is that you get downgraded and you don't get treated properly, and basically you're just left to wither away, and then you end up dying. In other cases, we have this, there used to be something called the Liverpool Care Pathway, where thousands of elderly people in care homes and in hospitals were basically killed. And there was a big uproar about it. So new protocols were brought in. But these new ones are even more dangerous than the previous ones. And what's happening is that if a doctor decides that, that they don't want to save your life, or actually even if you're not terminally ill, they decide that you're not worth treating, they can put you on what's called end of life pathway. And what happens is they basically withdraw your food and drink, and then you become very weak. And then they start giving you sedatives like midazolam and morphine. And what usually happens, within 39 hours, the person dies. But often they have not discussed it with the patient, and they've not told the family. And then there have been loads of cases where the family found out afterwards that somebody's forged on the records DNR, and that they've agreed to it when actually the person hasn't. And there was one really notorious case about a surgeon, and former NHS surgeon, who was several times the same day, 3 times in the same day, asked to agree to I think DNR, and he kept saying, no, I don't want that, I want care. And they still killed him anyway. And then there was a really another really horrific case of an Indian grandmother who was starved for 41 days, and she didn't die. And the family were really, really concerned, and they wanted to give food and drink. But the hospital then took them to the court of protection. And as happens in practically every single case, the judges always side with the hospital and the doctors. So they said, no, it's in the best interest to withdraw treatment. And they disclassify food and drink, nutrition as medical treatment. So this poor woman was then starved for another 11 days before she finally died. And she was elderly. What a horrible, horrible way to die.
I mean, what you've said about this sort of the situation as it is being bad anyway. You sent me a clip, a video clip of someone who was trying to care for their child in a hospital, and they were actually forced out by police. I'll just show it. It's not a very nice clip, as everyone will see.
Half an hour ago, Dr. informed us that they were going to take the tube
Yes,
out.
but they're not doing it right now. They're not doing it right now. They're not going to do anything without informing
Do
you.
you know what compassion is?
Yes, I do. Hence the reason I'm here, trying to plead with you from one mother to another that this is not right.
Leave go, you don't. Leave go. Get back. No, leave go.
Mrs. Abasha. Mrs. Abasha.
Leave go. Leave go if you don't. Leave go if you don't. What are you doing to my wife and yourself for?
Got head, chest pain. I've got chest pain.
Right, we'll take it here, Nathan.
I've got medicine in my pocket. I want to have some.
Right.
I've got medicine in my pocket.
If you sit up reasonably on the chair, we'll get you medication.
I can't. I'm feeling dizzy. I'm feeling dizzy. Why are you putting me?
Sit on the chair, it's just there.
I can't.
You can't?
Let me on the floor. I've got chest pain. Let me have my medicine. I've got chest pain. Let me have my medicine.
We will. Calm down first.
Let me have my medicine. I've got chest pain. I will have a heart attack.
Don't kick me.
I didn't kick you.
Yes, you did.
I didn't.
You're acting like an animal. It's disgusting.
You are an animal.
Get him out.
You are an animal.
Get him out.
I mean, that's really, really shocking. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like that with police in a hospital pulling a parent away from their child who's going to be effectively let to die.
Can I give you some context there? So what's happened is that the father is actually a respiratory consultant at the NHS who'd worked for them for about 30 years. The mother is also a doctor. And they'd just been called to a meeting just prior to that incident where the doctors had said to the family, we're going to immediately take the tube out, basically kill your daughter. So the father got the doctor were really, really concerned. So they went rushing out there to basically stop this happening. And they called the police. And then they got a court injunction and basically prevented the daughter from being saved. And they said that she had to die. And then what happened after that incident? Incidentally, the consultant, he actually had a heart problem. And because of what they did, he had a heart attack after that. And he had to be, he suffered for many, many months after that. So I'm not sure if he had surgery. And then they then tried to pursue it through the normal channels to try and basically expose what had happened, to expose who the doctors were. But they came up against basically the whole, the NHS, the hospital, various, I don't know if it was the BMA as well, but They had to fight it. And then they got help from Christian Concern. It took 7 years. And they eventually took it to the Supreme Court, and then they were successful with another family, I think in April last month. And now, finally, the names of those doctors are going to be revealed, and also the hospital. But there are lots of other families who are still being held under what's called transparency orders. They're not allowed to speak about it. These are secret courts. They're just basically, their families are killed, especially children, and they can't even speak about it. They can't go to the media, and it's horrific. And this is like a underbelly of the NHS that most people aren't aware of. And it's very, very terrifying.
I mean, that is something I'd never seen or heard of before. And I mean, it's shocking. I can imagine that situation being more commonplace with the assisted dying bill, where people would be trying to say this is a mistake. Are there any? I mean, what kind of issues like that have been raised in the impact assessment that the government's impact assessment raised anything like that?
It's basically a cost-benefit analysis in favour of it. You know, everyone thought it was going to be looking at, you know, the safeguards and how it would protect people. None of that. It's basically, you know, making the case that it's going to save the NHS, I think, £100 million a year. So it's obviously showing that it's a cost-saving exercise, which is what this is all about, really. But actually, there was an article in the British Medical Journal in February this year, which says that, you know, that it costs £11.7 billion in the final year of people's lives, the cost to the NHS in healthcare alone. So you can see that, you know, that the claim that it would be a saving £100 million in all aspects in terms of social care, pensions, healthcare is what's been claimed. That's wildly out, and maybe a way of making people, you know, be more on side. But the truth, I think, is closer to billions, really. And the other thing that came out in the impact assessment, which has been raised by the Hansard Society in terms of a concern, is over the drugs, because there's no regulatory regime in the bill for the assisted dying service. So, you know, it's ministers, the health secretary is going to decide which drugs get used. Now, as you may be aware, West Streeting has been receiving a lot of donations from private medical insurance, private health companies, and the latest figures I've been able to find from the Good Law Project, £372,000 is received from private health firms or those associated with it since 2015. And since he became health secretary, it's been £58,000. So I'll let you guess as to whether,
I mean,
you know, that's going to influence the decision about which drugs get used and, you know, which companies get picked.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors on the reason behind this, and all these, they're distracting everyone from the fact it might just be a lot about money cuts because of the way the NHS is at the moment. And I believe that this week as well, we've even seen further cuts being proposed to the NHS in the same week as this bill is going to be voted on potentially. But what are these new cuts they're putting on?
Yeah, so you know, they're saying that it's, you know, they don't want to do it, but actually there seems to be the £7 billion lacking in funding, and the services that look like they're going to be selected for cutting are palliative care, maternity services, children's, young people's mental health services, ADHD services for adults. I can't remember the rest off the top of my head, but there's quite a few. And then there's also
can I just say that, so they're cutting funding for palliative care,
yes,
the same week as they're bringing in possibly an assisted dying bill,
yes.
right?
And I'll tell you what happened in Canada. Canada used to have the 5th highest level of palliative care before they introduced assisted dying, and then they went to 27th in the league tables internationally for palliative care, because the money gets siphoned elsewhere. Another big concern, which I need to raise, is that a lot of these countries are harvesting the organs of the people who are going ahead with assisted dying, and it seems that they're being made to agree to it. And actually in this country, anybody who goes through this will also be able to, because I don't know if you know, if you don't opt out, they will take our organs when we die.
Yeah.
Because they've changed the law. It's not an opt-in service now, it's an opt-out service.
Well, look, you've pretty much convinced me that there's no way I think this bill should pass. And I'm sure other people watching this will see the same thing. What can we do between now and Friday? What do you think we can do?
We need to bombard MPs with lots of emails. We need to try and go and see MPs, because we need 28 MPs to change their mind for it not to pass. It's just 28 MPs. So, you know, it's not impossible. Please contact your MP. This will change our lives forever. We can never go back, because the money savings in this are so massive that no government could afford to take that step back. And people have talked about crossing a Rubicon. We don't want that to happen.